Alright, so this is going to be a quick tutorial on how to bleed the brakes on a W204 chassis Mercedes C300. It should apply to other W204 models as well. So I'm going to be power bleeding. I think it's far superior. You could do this. You could buy a power bleeder and do this yourself and still save money versus going to a shop and have them do it for you. So what you're going to need for the C300 are probably 4 quarts of .4 brake fluid, and you can use regular .4. I know I had an E46 which required like the low viscosity special .4, but the Mercedes can just use regular .4. So I took one of the bottles, I filled up, I put probably a quarter of it in the bleed bottle, which is on the passenger side rear hub right now, or on the brake disc. And then I put the rest of the bottle in the bleeder and pumped it up to about 15 psi. And you should only need 10 to 15. If you go too high, you can break the seals on these bleeders, which I did already. But yeah, so connect the cap to your reservoir, the cap that comes with the bleeder, and then go ahead and click in this quick release, and then fill up the bleeder, pump it up, and connect it, or rather connect it, then pump it up. And then we'll start the bleeding process. Alright, so we're back at the passenger side rear hub. So I have my bleeder bottle with just enough fluid that the hose inside of it doesn't suck air. Just sitting on the brake disc, and then that's going to the bleed valve. And then this is an 11mm flare nut wrench. And you can see this style of wrench is preferable because you're less likely to strip the bleeder nut. So I'd suggest just spending like the $10 or whatever it is to get a flare nut wrench to do this, so you don't strip the bleeder valve. Alright, so the next step is going to be to crack this bleeder valve open, and for that I use the flare nut wrench and a dead blow just to make sure I don't strip by, if I'm wrenching on it, I don't twist the wrench at all. And then it's hard to see, but there's fluid flowing from the bleeder valve down to the bottle here, and I'll just let that go for a little bit, and then we'll check the color when it's filled up. It's already starting to get a little dark from that old fluid. So while you have the bleeder valve open, you might want to come back and check the power bleeder itself, because as it bleeds, the pressure here will fall. Basically, you just pressurize this and let it push through the system. And so you want to keep that between 10 and 15 psi to keep the process moving. Alright, so wheel number 1 is kind of done, and you can definitely see this car needed it. Right at the top is like the, inch or so of fresh fluid I put in this bottle, and then at the bottom is all the old fluid that came out. So not good, but at least it's being done now. So I'm going to dispose of this in one of the empty brake fluid bottles, and then keep going until everything that comes out is clear, like this up here. Alright, so I'm going to say that this wheel is done at this point. There's a little bit of the gross old fluid that was left from the first flush, but now most of the stuff coming out is nice clear fluid. So I'm going to close the bleeder, and then put the cap back on, and then move to the driver's side rear wheel. Alright, so after your first wheel, and I recommend using about a quart of brake fluid a wheel, you want to check the bleeder reservoir. So to do that, press the pressure relief valve, and then this will depressurize back to atmospheric, and then you can disconnect it from here and open the hatch there, and then put brake fluid in. And one thing that happens is when you depressurize and repressurize, you introduce a lot of air into this line. So what you might want to do is put all your brake fluid in for the car, so like 3 quarts if it can fit that, and then try not to depressurize and repressurize the bleeder for the whole rest of the car. Just something to keep in mind. Otherwise you'll have to bleed out all the air that you introduce here all the way through the car out of the calipers. So now I'm under the car. I'm going to do the clutch slave cylinder bleed, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's the oh man, not great lighting, but it's the rubber cover up there on the transmission. So what I'm going to do first is remove this, which I think is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these 8mm fasteners. Alright, so the bleed valve port's much easier to see with this pan off. That pan, it was actually 8 of the 8mm fasteners, not 6. So there's the engine oil pan, and then right there is the bleeder. So I'm going to try to pry off this rubber cover, and hopefully I can get around this harness and these plugs, but if not, I'll figure out how to move those. Okay, so here's the setup for bleeding the clutch slave cylinder, or rather the whole clutch system. So up there is the bleed valve, which I think is a 9mm, and then it goes down to the bottle. So same thing, just pressurize the power bleeder and then crack open the bleed valve and hopefully get any air out.